Today, I'm going to show you how to cast your own unique coins. Stay tuned. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So, fairly recently, we've been on kind of a mad quest to figure out all the best ways to make our own coins. We have enough at this point that we can make a playlist, so you can check out up here all the different ways we've done it so far. Today, though, I've decided to do a skill that has eluded me so far. I've been trying to cast metal for a bit now, and every single time I've tried, I've totally screwed it up. Also, you can check out those episodes here. But today, I am going to conquer this thing, and we are going to cast our very own coins. All right, without much further ado, let's jump right into it and level up this skill. All right, so today we're gonna go over 2 different ways to cast coins. I know, we're shooting for the fences here. The first one, though, is the one that has eluded me traditionally, and that is like sand casting. That's basically when you put the impression of something in a special sand, and then you pour your metal right into that little indentation there. Though I don't just use any sand for this, I specifically use this Foundry sand here. I'll leave a link to it in the description below, but it has a consistency like if sand and clay had a baby. It's really fine, but leaves a great impression when you press into it. All right, so I want there to be a design on both sides of this coin, not just one side. That means I need to make a 2-part mold. Now, you've seen me make molds in the past, and normally I'm like gluing up a whole box, I'm putting little registration keys in there, but I found a way to do this like stupid easy, especially for a small project like this. All starts with these 2 blocks of 2x4. Obviously, if you're doing a bigger project, it can be bigger than 2x4, but like 2x4 is perfect for this. In lieu of registration marks to make sure they're lining up exactly how I need them to, I'm just screwing these suckers together. Now everything I do to those blocks are going to be in line comparative to those screws, right? So as long as I screw it back together in that same orientation, I should be good. To make sure I do, I only put in 3 screws. This way it can only go together one way, right? Cool, so these are stuck together, leaving me plenty of space in the middle for something roughly this coin size. Now, to make the space in the middle where the actual like molding process is gonna happen, I just bust out this big old hole saw here. This is more than big enough to not only accommodate the coin, but to accommodate enough sand around it. I just take this bad boy and I saw straight through the middle of my boards. If you've never used a hole saw before, it's really pretty cool. Once you're all the way through, you come out with this plug here. I remember the first time I did that, I was like, what do I do now? There's a big old plug of wood stuck inside of here. But that's what these little slits on the side are for. You just gotta take something like a punch, put it down in there, and then you pry up. That plug of wood should just come right out. As a bonus tip, now you have an interesting way to make little wooden wheels. Look at that, just thought you should know. I don't know, I thought that was cool. After removing that first plug from the first board, I just finished my cut all the way through, leaving me with this big hole in the center of my boards. All right, cool. So that is where like the actual sand and coin or whatever else I'm gonna be casting is gonna live. But we need a way to like pour the metal into it, right? So we need a spout on the top. To get this going, I did exactly the same thing, just with a smaller hole saw, coming in from the top center all the way through. Now, the last thing we're going to need is what's called a sprue hole. This is so that oxygen can escape as you're pouring stuff into it. So picture if you were trying to pour something into like a closed container, because all the liquid is going in through the hole in the top, there's gonna be air trapped down in the bottom. That's when you get like that glugging, right? Well, when you're casting, that air trapped in the bottom, especially if the metal starts to cool very quickly, it has nowhere to go. So you're gonna end up with bubbles and voids everywhere. So you need to give that air a place to go. To do that with this one, I simply came in from the top with a drill bit, again, right in the center of both boards. So now I have a little hole that goes right from the top middle here, right out to the side. And check that out, I have a perfect little mold, and it was like super easy to make. I don't know, I thought that was a slick little tray. It took me less than 10 minutes to make this thing, when normally I'm building these like super overcomplicated pieces that have to fit together, right? This is way more simple. Okay, so the thing I wanted to try to cast is this little challenge coin that I had made before. Specifically because it is super detailed. It has really, really small writing on it, some nice like design around the edges. If I can get this to cast really nicely, I could probably get most things to cast pretty nicely. Also, it's an extra challenge because it's very thin, which means there's only a thin little void to fill. So like, I gotta be extra careful to make sure there's enough room for air to escape and all that. Let's see how we do. So I start by laying down my coin onto this board here and just sprinkling a little bit of talcum powder on it. Now you want to brush it away. You don't want the talcum powder to fill in any of the designs, but it's just going to help it release from the sand afterwards. With that good, I simply place 1/2 of my mold over the coin, and then I use this strainer to slowly sift in some of this sand. I don't think you really need to use a strainer. I just figure if I do that to like break it apart a little bit, it's going to get into those details a little bit better. Once I've got this whole thing filled up, I press it down and then lightly tap it with a mallet to really get in all that detail. This also packs it in so it isn't gonna just fall apart afterwards. Then I use a board just to flatten it out. And check that out, that little sucker is locked right in there. It's perfect. With that half done, we're able to go ahead and make the next half. And because everything goes together with those screws, we can just screw it in and know it's gonna fit perfectly. All right, with that side stuck in, we're gonna wanna go ahead and put on the other side. But first, again, we're gonna sprinkle some talcum powder just so the sand doesn't stick together and that coin is easy to remove. Then I put on the second half and screw it into place. Then it's exactly the same process, filling that void with sand and using my mallet to make sure it's all locked in tight. And when I unscrew it, look at how perfect the indentation is. I don't know if you can pick it up. I'm really excited with how well this works. I'm very, very excited about that. Anyways, from here, we need to go ahead and clear that space that we're actually gonna be able to pour the metal into. To do that, I just kind of took an awl and removed the material in a bit of a funnel shape. Then pop the coin out. I then did the exact same thing on the other side and also removed the material going all the way up to that sprue hole. Once I was happy with that, I lined them back up again and screwed them together. And that's really where screwing them together comes in handy, because I know for a fact that they're in the exact same orientation as they were when I put the whole thing together last time. So there's like no way I'm gonna mess that up. The screws act as my key. I love that, that's great. Now, because I want you to be able to do this at home, I'm trying to make all of the things you have access to like as easy as possible. Which means for a metal, I wanted something that any of you could melt at home. So I choose this pewter here. Pewter melts at, I think, like 400 something degrees Fahrenheit. Easily attainable on your cooktop. You just gotta use like a pot you don't really care about because, you know, you're melting metal in it. Now, I didn't want to melt that whole brick o' metal for a tiny little coin there. You could probably get like 30 coins out of this thing. So I just put it in the vise and I cut off a tiny little chunk. This little chunk I then just placed into a pot on top of an electric burner. Again, really easy. You don't need special tools. Then after like 5 to 10 minutes, this became a little T1000 pool of molten metal. Was it T1000? T2000? Ooh. You guys are gonna rip me apart in the comment section for my lack of Terminator knowledge, I think. Internet's a weird place. Get ripped apart for lack of Terminator knowledge. Anywho, with that all melted, I just kind of poured it into the top nice and slow-like. And since it's such a small amount of metal, it actually cools off very quickly. So I just unscrewed it to check my work. And brushing it away, I was super excited at the detail until I uncovered the very corner. Oh my god, I'm like this close to conquering this particular dragon of mine, and crushed me a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But I think I know the issue. I think that right there is like I was talking about before. That's a little air bubble that got stuck, which means I don't think my sprue hole was placed in the right spot. I think it's a little too far down, so the metal kind of covered it over too quickly and left it blocked. But on the bright side, I can reuse all of that sand and I can reuse that pewter. I just remelt the damn thing. So back to the drawing board, I put it all back together, packed in my sand, though this time I cleared out the pour hole from the top while it was all together. Now you can't see it well in this shot because my camera wasn't behaving, but see the little bit of silver just at the top there? By going all the way down to the very rim of the coin and then kind of clearing around that, I was actually able to make that hole larger too, so I know that I'm getting like all of it in there fairly quickly. Then after opening it up, I moved the start of that sprue hole to just next to where that funnel goes in. This means it has to fill basically all the way up before it ever clogs up that little sprue hole there. Here's hoping on this one. With that hopefully figured out, I went ahead and poured some more molten metal into this. And yo, look at this thing. Oh my god, it looks so good. I can't express to you how happy I was. It's been years I've been screwing up sand molds. The detail in it it's just so perfect. The only downside to it is that the top where I actually poured the metal into, it's a little bit chunkier than I would like. I'll be more careful next time. Normally you can just kind of twist it off, but this one I had to take my hacksaw and actually mark around it carefully before I could take it off. Not a big deal, but still. That area and the sprue hole area I cleaned up with a file, and look at this thing. I am super proud of it. It is identical to the original, right down to the very small text in there, like you can read it. It says keep leveling up you. It is legitimately gorgeous. I keep going to pick up the original and picking up this one instead. The original is just a little bit darker because it's a different kind of metal and it's been around a little bit at this point, but like that's impressive. And if I can get detail this small, I can make anything. Like if I took some super sculpey and made a little clay round and then carved it to be a little coin, I can then cast that out of metal as many times as I want. That is slick. I love that. Now, of course, if you have like a little foundry or something, you can cast them out of aluminum or whatever. Or if you want them to look like gold, maybe brass. These are really, really cool. But that was only one of the 2 techniques I wanted to talk about today. Because what say you don't want to remake a sand mold every single time? What if you just wanted to have a mold that like lasts forever, right? Well, not forever, but you know, lasts a long time. So there's a bunch of ways to go about this. You can make it like out of a plaster or something. Or I know Smooth On makes a silicone called Mold Max 60 that's a high temperature silicone that you can use specifically for this practice. But for today's episode, I really wanted to use some of these bad boys. These are graphite blocks. And yeah, it's graphite like you use in a pencil, right? So like here's paper, whoop, that's a little pencil mark right there. That's pretty slick. I'm just gonna carry this around like the worst pencil ever, just kind of, although I bet I could do a whole art piece with this. That'd be cool. Anyways, I'm digressing. The cool thing about graphite is it's graphite. It's actually really soft. So if you wanted to, using the same kind of methods like I showed in the video about carving metal to stamp your coin, you can go ahead and just carve a design into this thing. Then again, just like before, 2-part mold, little sprue on the top, you pour your metal, and whatever you carved, that's what you get. I think that's super slick. That said, for this time around, I'm not gonna hand carve this. Just because your boy has a weekend to do all of these projects, and I've run out of time. But that's okay, because I have this gorgeous thing. This is the Ohmtech MP696980, which is an 80-watt MOPA fiber laser. And it is by far my favorite toy in the shop. So far, I've used it to make coins. I've made all the pendants for everybody at our camp. I even made us signet rings for like when we go ahead and sign official documents, we can put it on. In the last coin episode, we used it to make the actual dies. It can not only mark and engrave metal, but it can also like color metal, which is really, really cool. I don't know, they gave it to us to review, but they gave us no guidelines on how to review it. They're like, yeah, just tell us what you think of it. And I genuinely love it. It is an incredible tool. I know a lot of you aren't gonna drop the money on getting a laser, and I get that. I would check out their website though, link in the description below, because they do have like previously owned ones and stuff that you can get at a pretty reduced price. I'm just saying, if you wanna start like an online business or something that involves laser engraving, I can highly recommend this one. I friggin' love it. Not only that, and this is a personal aside, when I was younger, I really loved the movie Real Genius. This is gonna date me. It's like a super 80s movie. Anyways, there's one scene in there where they're like, I'm the laser on, and they push a button.
Laser on.
Whoa! That scene plays every single time I turn this thing on. I turn a key, I push a button. I don't know, it's satisfying in that way too. It's little things. Okay, so anyways, long story longer, I guess, we're gonna use that to engrave these blocks. First though, just like with any 2-part mold, they have to match up perfectly. So in order to make sure I'm hitting kind of dead center here, I first use a ruler going from corner to corner on these blocks and mark it very lightly with an awl. Once I have an X going through it and I know exactly where the center is, I use my wing dividers, set at roughly half the diameter of this coin here, and I circumscribe a circle with the very middle of the block as its center. Also very important is to make sure like my laser is focused. And this bad boy has this awesome little kind of crank at the top. I mean, I just have to turn it until these little dots become one dot and I know I'm focused, which is it's super slick. Now the design I'm using is this kind of tree design here that is the symbol of our camp, Dendronia. I want to try to design like a cool camp coin. So it's going to be like our symbol on one side and then like a fox and crow symbol on the other side. But there is another problem, because though the laser actually marks out exactly the shape it's going to be cutting, that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to place this block exactly the right orientation every time. which is a problem because if I move it to check it and then I put it back down, it's askew a little bit, or like between the two different sides, if they're askew a little bit, it's just not gonna match up. Then I'm either gonna laser back over what I've already done, or like the two pieces just won't work. Luckily, those holes at the bottom of the laser there are super useful because OhmTech sends along these little bars with it as well. These things actually just kind of line up with those holes and screw right into place. By putting these in line and locking them in, I can be sure that this block is gonna stay in the same exact orientation every single time. Then it's just a simple matter of moving my image in Lightburn until that little laser circle matches up exactly where I need it. And with that, the process begins. Man, I don't know what it is about watching like sped up videos of a laser doing its thing, but man, I love it so much. And it's just so cool. Again, I'm gonna sound old. It's so cool that we live in a day and age where I can just have a laser doing a thing in my basement. Not just any laser, but this thing is awesome. This is such a cool laser. OhmTech didn't mess around with this one. This thing is beautiful and it does exactly what I need it to do. Now, because these things are so like heat resistant and whatever, I had it set to like really high power and going fairly slow just so that I can get a nice deep engraving. Oh, here's another hot tip too. Once I was done with one of them, again, I needed to be in the same exact position. So I just made sure the two pictures were like lined up exactly, and I just shut one off and turned the other on, knowing they're gonna fall in exactly the same position. And then I simply started the second half. And in no time, look at how cool this is. That detail is sick. I have extra blocks of this. I'm definitely going to eventually try making something by hand, like carving it, but there's no way I'm going to get that detailed. That is beautiful. And I know they match up like perfectly, it's just exciting. Now, just like before though, I need to go ahead and make my little sprue hole and the pour hole and all that kind of stuff. Now, because it's graphite, you could totally just use a little file to make this happen. But I've already mechanized the process this far, so I just bust out a Dremel to help this along. And learning from last time, the sprue hole is way closer to the top. And just as before, I melt my metal. Though while that's melting, I actually want to go ahead and heat these up. To do that, I just use my heat gun and kind of warm them up slowly. You never want to pour something hot like melting metal into something cold because it's going to cause like stress fractures and stuff. Heck, depending on what you're pouring it into, you can make the damn thing explode, so you gotta be careful. Then, just as before, I use a little bit of talcum powder just to make sure everything releases nice and cleanly. I do have some really small detail in here, and I'm afraid that if I don't add some sort of a release agent, that the metal will actually pull it right apart. Again, it's graphite, it is very soft. With that good, I clamp it together, hit it one more time with my heat gun just to make sure it's nice and warm, and then pour my metal into place. And oh my God, first time, it came out perfect. All the detail is exactly how I want it. There's no air bubbles or voids. I'm super excited by this. I go back in with some nips and I remove the sprue metal there, and then lightly run along my saw just so I can bend the top piece out of place. Now, my only real issue with it is the design I made is kind of like the stylistic, you can see it here, like fox and crow going around each other. But when everything's like brightly silver, it's kind of hard to make out that detail. So I just apply this black wash into it, making sure it fills in every little nook and cranny. Then I simply run the surface of my coin over some sandpaper to brighten up the top. Doing this really helped bring out all that detail. Now you can see both the fox and the crow, and then flip it around and you've got the Dendronia symbol right there. This honestly looks like an old pirate coin of some sort. I'm probably gonna workshop this design a little bit. I think it'd be cool to have a little rim around the edge or whatever. So like I said, I have extra of these to try on. They're actually really cheap to get. I'll leave a link in the description below. But for my first time going, this is great. And because it's this, I can make them over and over again. Look at how beautiful both of these coins are. Oh, I'm so excited by it. And I'll tell you, this one here, soup to nuts, took, I don't know, maybe 2 hours to make. That's cutting all this, melting the metal, and kind of like trial and error a little bit. Totally not hard to do. And now that I've shown you the trial and error kind of workout parts of it, you could probably do it a lot faster. And this part, the lasering, took a few hours to do just because I did a lot of passes to make sure it was nice and clean. But after the fact, you literally pour it, you wait just a couple of minutes, and you open it and you pour the metal out. You put it back together, you pour again, wait a couple of minutes, open it, like you can mill these things out. That is super slick. Let me know, by the way, if you'd like me to try any other methods of this. Like I said, you can do like silicone plaster, but if you'd like me to test those materials out, let me know in the description below. I think it would be kind of fun. Let's put it this way, even if you don't want me to, I will personally in my free time. I just like to know if you want to see it. That's all. Okay, that is all I got today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I had a lot of fun learning how to do this and conquering my white whale. If you have any other methods or you see something that I messed up on, definitely leave it in the description below. I'd love to learn from you. Oh, and speaking of learn from you, if you haven't joined the Discord yet, definitely jump on there. These are some of the projects that people on the Discord are making, and one of the things I love the most about this community is the fact that I'm constantly learning from them. I swear to God, I learn way more from the Discord than anybody on the Discord has ever learned from me. I love this community, I love everybody in it, and it is one of the things I am most proud of having built. So yeah, if you'd like to join the conversation, link in the description below. All right, that's all I got. I hope you give this a try. If you do, definitely leave it in the description below. Also, if you like what I did here today, don't forget to give me some of that like and love and subscribe so you know when I release new content. In the meantime, though, keep leveling up, you. You made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another great way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we couldn't do any of this without them. Super special shout out to our Grandmaster tier level Patreon members, Andrew Smith, Froggy, Dragon Designs, and Uri Sakharov. I'm using one of your recommendations on how to pronounce that one. Let's see how we do. Again, though, special thanks to all of my Patreon members. Really, it is only because of you we're able to do any of this. So, like, super thank you. If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can check out one of these videos that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that really helps a lot too. Now, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go cast millions of coins. I will become the economy, or I'll just like swim in them like Scrooge McDuck. I don't know. Either way, I'm pretty happy.